When we talk about discipline, most people imagine it as restriction, as if it were a set of chains placed upon their freedom. They think of rules, of limitation, of having to say no when their emotions scream yes. But here's the truth: most people miss discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It is the very foundation of it. Without discipline, you are not free. You are merely enslaved by your impulses, chained to your cravings, dragged around by the moods and whims of the moment. That is not freedom. That is chaos disguised as liberty. Consider this: a person who cannot resist distraction is not free to concentrate. A person who cannot control their spending is not free to build wealth. A person who cannot manage their emotions is not free to form strong relationships. The absence of discipline looks like freedom on the surface, but in reality it is dependence. It is being controlled by something outside yourself. True freedom, paradoxically, is the ability to say no, the ability to resist, the ability to choose deliberately rather than react blindly. Philosophers have wrestled with this paradox for centuries. The Stoics, for example, taught that mastery of self was the only real form of sovereignty a human could achieve. They argued that fortune, status, wealth, these things could be taken away by the world at any time. But discipline, the ability to govern one's own actions and choices, could not be taken from you. That was real freedom, and when you look at modern psychology, it echoes the same lesson. People with high self-control consistently report not only higher productivity, but also higher levels of happiness, precisely because they are not at the mercy of every passing desire. Now, let's bring this down to daily life. Imagine you force yourself to wake up early to train your body to focus on your work. At first, it feels like a burden, like you are stealing something from yourself. But over time, you notice something remarkable. You start to feel lighter, stronger, more capable. You are no longer panicking when deadlines come because you've trained yourself to handle them early. You are no longer exhausted from chasing distractions because you've trained yourself to focus. In other words, by accepting the short-term discomfort of discipline, you inherit the long-term comfort of freedom. Discipline is not about limitation, it's about liberation. It liberates you from laziness, from fear, from regret. It grants you the dignity of choice, the ability to direct your life where you want it to go rather than being dragged by it like a leaf in the wind. And yes, it requires force. You must push yourself beyond the easy path, because the easy path never leads to true freedom, it only deepens the chains. So the next time you feel resistance when forcing yourself to act with discipline, remember this: you are not chaining yourself, you are unchaining yourself. You are breaking free from the invisible prison of impulse. And in that moment of struggle, you are not losing freedom, you are finally creating it. The moment you decide to bring discipline into your life, you will immediately collide with resistance. It is not accidental, and it is not a flaw in you. It is simply how the human mind is designed. Our brains are wired to avoid discomfort, to conserve energy, to choose the path of least resistance. Psychologists call it the pleasure principle, the tendency to chase what feels good in the moment and run from what feels hard. Evolution built this mechanism to keep us safe, to conserve calories when survival was uncertain. But in today's world, where survival is no longer the issue and growth is, this same instinct becomes the very enemy of progress. That's why discipline must be forced. Left on its own, the mind will not volunteer for discomfort. It will tell you that tomorrow is a better day to start, that one more hour of sleep won't matter, that checking your phone for the 10th time is harmless. It will disguise its weakness with logic. And if you listen to it without question, you will spend your life circling in procrastination and regret. To break this cycle, you have to apply force, not against the world, but against yourself. Think about what happens when you first push yourself to exercise after weeks or months of inactivity. Your body resists, your mind protests, everything inside screams for you to stop. And yet, if you endure that first wave of resistance, something shifts. The body adapts. The pain turns into energy. What was unbearable yesterday becomes manageable today. This is not just physical adaptation, it is psychological conditioning. By forcing yourself through resistance, you train your nervous system to normalize discomfort. Discipline, then, is less about fighting forever and more about enduring long enough for the difficult to become familiar. Philosophically, this echoes the principle of habituation. Aristotle argued that we do not become virtuous by thinking about virtue, we become virtuous by acting in ways that shape our character. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the choice to face fear until fear loses its power. In the same way, discipline is not natural at first, it is cultivated by repeatedly forcing yourself to act against comfort until the act itself becomes second nature. And this is why so many people fail. They wait for motivation, they wait to feel like doing the work, and when the feeling does not come, they surrender. But discipline does not wait for permission from emotion. It demands force in the beginning, a conscious override of the brain's default wiring. You don't wait to feel disciplined, you act disciplined, and the feelings eventually follow. So the next time you hear that inner voice telling you to rest, to delay, to give and understand what it is not wisdom, it is resistance. And the only way to conquer resistance is to push through it not once, but consistently. Force yourself, because that initial force is the ignition that sets discipline in motion. And once the engine is running, what once felt impossible will become your new normal. Discipline begins where comfort ends, and the only way to cross that line is by force. At its core, discipline is not just a battle with time or habits, it is a battle with identity. Every single decision you make carries with it a silent question. Am I acting in alignment with the person I am right now, or the person I aspire to become? This is why discipline often feels so difficult. It is not simply about saying no to temptation, it is about choosing between two versions of yourself, the comfortable, immediate self and the higher, future self. When you procrastinate, overindulge, or give in to laziness, you are casting a vote for the identity of someone who prioritizes ease over growth. And when you force yourself to follow through, even when you don't feel like it, you are casting a vote for the identity of someone who values strength, resilience, and long-term vision. Every action, no matter how small, becomes a statement of identity. You are constantly shaping who you are becoming by what you choose to tolerate in yourself. This is where many people misunderstand discipline. They think it is about denial, about constantly restricting and punishing themselves. But in truth, discipline is not about saying no to life. It is about saying yes to a deeper life. It is not about rejecting pleasure. It is about choosing a higher form of pleasure. There is fleeting pleasure in indulgence, but there is enduring satisfaction in self-mastery. To refuse the cheap satisfaction of the present is not deprivation, it is loyalty to your future self. Philosophically, this tension between desire and identity has been discussed for centuries. Plato spoke of the divided soul, where reason, spirit, and appetite are always in conflict. Modern psychology echoes this with the idea of present bias, the tendency to prioritize immediate rewards over future gains. What both traditions are pointing to is the same truth. Discipline is the act of aligning yourself with a vision of who you want to be, rather than being enslaved by who you happen to be in the moment. And here lies the real power of forcing discipline upon yourself. Each time you push past resistance and act in alignment with your higher identity, you strengthen that identity. It becomes easier to believe in yourself because your actions provide evidence. Identity is not simply declared, it is earned, built brick by brick, decision by decision. The man who wants to be disciplined must first act disciplined again and again until the actions harden into character. So the next time you are tempted to betray your own standards, pause and ask yourself, which version of me am I choosing right now? The weak version that craves comfort, or the stronger version that demands growth? Discipline is not about what you deny yourself, it is about who you decide to be. And the truth is this: every act of discipline is a declaration of identity. With each choice, you are either reinforcing the old self that holds you back or constructing the new self that will carry you forward. Choose wisely, because in the end, you do not just live with your habits, you live as them. Discipline often feels like something grand, a heroic act reserved for extraordinary moments. We imagine the disciplined person as someone who makes massive sacrifices all at once, someone who wakes up one day and transforms their entire life overnight. But that is an illusion. Discipline is not built in dramatic bursts, it is forged in the small, quiet compulsions that you repeat every single day. The mind loves to glorify the idea of transformation, but in reality, transformation is nothing more than the accumulation of ordinary choices consistently honored. Think of willpower as a muscle. If you try to lift a weight that is far beyond your capacity, you will fail and perhaps even injure yourself. But if you train with smaller weights and remain consistent, your strength grows, and what once seemed impossible eventually becomes effortless. Discipline works the same way. You don't start by conquering every weakness or eliminating every bad habit at once. You start by forcing yourself in small, deliberate acts of control, getting up when the alarm rings instead of hitting snooze, finishing the task before indulging in distraction, keeping the promise you made to yourself even when no one is watching. These small compulsions are the repetitions that strengthen your will, and over time, something extraordinary happens. What once required force begins to require less effort. The behaviors you once had to drag yourself through begin to feel natural, automatic. Neuroscience calls this process neuroplasticity. The brain rewires itself according to repeated action. What feels unbearable today can, with enough repetition, become second nature. This is why discipline is not about waiting for strength. It is about training for strength. Each small victory compounds, and soon the man who could barely control himself in the smallest matters discovers he can now face larger battles with confidence. Philosophers have long understood this principle as well. Aristotle argued that excellence is not an act but a habit. In other words, greatness is not something you perform once, it is something you repeat until it becomes inseparable from your character. And the only way to cultivate those habits is through steady, consistent practice. Discipline is not a sudden leap, it is a staircase climbed one step at a time. This also means we should not underestimate the power of small lapses. Just as consistency builds strength, inconsistency erodes it. Each time you surrender to impulse, you weaken the muscle of will, making it easier to surrender the next time. That is why forcing yourself, even in seemingly minor situations, matters. It is never just about the act. It is about who you are training yourself to become. So remember, discipline is not built in the grand moments when everyone is watching. It is built in the small compulsions you honor when no one notices. Every time you force yourself to follow through, you are doing more than completing a task. You are training the muscle that will one day carry you through the battles that define your life. And in the end, it is not the weight of one giant act that changes you, but the steady, daily force of repetition. Discipline is not a single act of strength. It is the practiced art of showing up again and again until strength becomes your nature. One of the hardest truths to accept about life is that pain is unavoidable. There is no path that frees you from struggle, no choice that exempts you from sacrifice. What you do have is the ability to decide which pain you are willing to endure. There is the pain of discipline, and there is the pain of regret. One hurts now, the other hurts later, and the later pain is always heavier. Think about it. Waking up early to exercise is uncomfortable, yes. It aches in your muscles, it weighs on your tired body, it tests your will. But compare that to the pain of carrying years of poor health, of watching opportunities slip away because your body or your energy failed you. That pain lingers. That pain compounds. Or consider the discipline of saving and investing instead of indulging every impulse to spend. It feels restrictive in the moment. But compare that to the suffocating burden of financial insecurity later in life, when you realize the comfort you traded was temporary and the regret is permanent. The human mind is biased toward comfort. It wants to delay difficulty. This is why procrastination feels so natural. But procrastination is not an escape. It is simply borrowing pain from the future, with interest. The task still comes due, but now the cost is higher. Discipline flips this around. It pays the cost now upfront when it is smaller and manageable so that the future is lighter. In essence, discipline is not about avoiding pain, it is about choosing a pain that serves you rather than destroys you. Philosophers have always pointed to this truth. The Stoics, for instance, taught that voluntary hardship was the path to strength. By practicing discomfort now, through restraint, endurance, and effort, you inoculate yourself against greater suffering later. Modern psychology affirms the same principle. Those who can delay gratification consistently achieve more success and report greater satisfaction in life. Why? Because they've trained themselves to choose the useful pain over the destructive one. This is why forcing discipline matters. It is not simply about grinding through difficult tasks. It is about recognizing the equation life demands of you. There is no world in which you escape the price. You will either pay in sweat, focus, and sacrifice now, or you will pay in regret, weakness, and unfulfilled potential later. And when you put them side by side, the pain of discipline is always lighter than the pain of regret. So when you face that moment of resistance, when the easier path tempts you, remind yourself there is no easy path, only two different forms of struggle. You are either enduring the temporary sting of effort or sentencing yourself to the lasting weight of regret. Choose wisely. Because in the end, discipline asks for your discomfort today so it can give you freedom tomorrow. Regret asks for your comfort today, but demands your soul tomorrow. The choice is yours, but the consequences are permanent. At the highest level, discipline is not about productivity, success, or even achievement. Those are byproducts. Discipline, at its core, is about building a life you can respect, a life that reflects the best of who you are capable of becoming. Without discipline, life tends to collapse into randomness. Days blur together, tasks are left unfinished, promises to yourself remain broken, and when you live that way for too long, you lose something far more valuable than time. You lose respect for yourself. Think of what it feels like when you say you'll do something and then don't. There's a subtle erosion that happens inside. You may brush it off in the moment, but deep down you know you betrayed your own standard. Multiply that by weeks, months, even years, And it is no wonder so many people feel restless, unfulfilled, even resentful of their own lives. It's not because they lack opportunity, it's because they lack discipline, and with that, they lack trust in themselves. Discipline reverses this erosion. Every time you force yourself to honor a commitment, you're not just completing a task, you're proving to yourself that your word means something. You're showing yourself that you can be counted on. This builds an inner dignity, a quiet strength that others can sense. People respect those who respect themselves, and self-respect is born from discipline. Philosophically, you could say discipline is a form of devotion. It is the act of sacrificing comfort in service of something higher. Religions have always understood this principle. Fasting, prayer, meditation, physical rigor, all of these practices are rooted in discipline. They are not punishments. They are reminders that the human spirit becomes noble only when it learns to govern itself. To live without discipline is to drift, but to live with discipline is to build, not just a career or a reputation, but a character. And character is destiny. The life you ultimately create will not be defined by your intentions, but by the discipline with which you carried them out. Dreams without discipline are fantasies. But when discipline breathes life into them, they become realities. This is why the disciplined person commands respect, because others see in them what they secretly wish they had in themselves, the strength to live deliberately rather than accidentally. So the question is not whether discipline is worth it, but whether you are willing to force yourself into it long enough for it to reshape you. Because the truth is, discipline is not suffering, it is sovereignty. It is the quiet power of knowing you are no longer a slave to impulse, but a master of your own life. And that is the ultimate reward. Not applause, not recognition, but the deep, unshakable peace of looking at your life and knowing you built it with intention. Discipline is the road to that peace. And if you truly want to respect your life, there is no other path. Discipline is not punishment. It is proof that you are worthy of the life you dream of.